Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are continuing in the chapter Knowledge by Identity and Separative Knowledge, and we are on page 564, beginning with the line, "In the Supreme Timeless Existence."
Again, as usual, we will summarize the previous para so that we get the sense of continuity and the reference to what he is going to tell us. In the subliminal, even when the cosmic consciousness is attained, the knowledge is greater than in the outer nature and much enlarged. Still, it is not the pure knowledge by identity. It is mixed with ignorance. Mixed with it. Far superior to our mental knowledge, but still inferior to the true spiritual knowledge.
But it's from the subliminal.
Yeah, in the subliminal, yes.
Yeah.
In order to go to the absolute pure identity, we have to go to the two extremes of the subliminal, the superconscient and the subconscient. This is what we have to examine both and see what they are in nature. But the subconscient below is a dark, blind region. It's a massive, semi-conscious, half-formed individuality. We have to go to the superconscient, which is the realm of spiritual light and power and purity, in order to find the source of the knowledge of identity. Discover the difference between the identity and the separation, between the knower and the known. So, that's what he's doing. He's exploring the regions where consciousness is there, superconscient, inconscient. Subliminal. So, but the subconscious below that we have read just now. So, then that's all. That is he said.
Yeah.
So
It's
now in the para we are going to read today, he is examining the superconscious first. Okay. So in the supreme timeless existence. So obviously the supreme timeless existence is the superconscious, the highest level. Supreme timeless existence. The timeless existence starts at the higher mind level, but he is talking of the supreme timeless, even higher than that. Okay? And also we cannot always locate these planes of consciousness geographically because there is a mixture. Each one is dovetailing into the other and there is no clear cut. In the middle there is a clear cut, but up and below they are mixing with the lower and mixing with the higher.
And the transcendent?
The transcendent is also it is clear, it is transcendent of the universe. But in itself, it's not a plane. You can be transcendent even in the higher mind. It's possible to be transcendent. Okay? So, in the supreme timeless existence, as far as we know it by reflection in spiritual experience. So even when you have silenced your mind and you go to the higher mind level, you don't know the supreme truth, but you see a reflection in it. So a reflection can be quite accurate, but it's not the real thing. And also, it can be quite clear or not very clear depending on the individual nature.
As if seen in a mirror?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
It's a reflection.
Yes.
It's not the real thing. Okay. So, we know it by reflection in spiritual experience. Existence and consciousness are one. So, in the supreme timeless existence, existence, consciousness are one. So, what does he mean by that? Existence is subtlest substance at the highest level. So, at the highest level, the substance itself is conscious. It's not that it is something different. It's like our brain itself is conscious. The material stuff of the brain is conscious. Actually, it is not. At this level, thoughts come into the brain matter.
Yes.
And then you think that there is a thought. But at the highest level, the matter, the substance and the consciousness are the same. It's like a stone which is conscious of itself.
So when the thoughts are coming, they're coming from the universal or
Yes.
the cosmic
Yes.
existence.
From universe as well as individuals. It can
Yes.
come from individuals
Yes.
also.
Yes.
From the universal is the sea and the individual are the waves. So even a wave can touch you. So all these are possibilities. We are accustomed to identify consciousness with certain operations of mentality and sense. And where these are absent or quiescent, we speak of that state of being as unconscious. So, there is an operation of mentality, he is saying. So, in a stone, you would say very clearly, there is no consciousness. It's not true. Spiritually, there is consciousness there, but sleeping. It's not. But when life comes in, there is movement and there is reaction to sensitivity, sensitive reaction to the incoming impact of the world. So, you say that a life being, whether it's a insect or whatever it is, if there is an impact on it, it reacts. So you say that consciousness is there only when there is an impact and there is a reaction. So in that case, most of the trees also, you declare them to be unconscious, except some plants. Those mimosa, for instance, if you touch it, yes, the leaves close. Yes. So you say, oh, there is some sort of consciousness. But it's not true. There is consciousness everywhere, more or less. The nearer to matter, the consciousness is less. The consciousness is not less, but it is imprisoned. It's imprisoned in matter. And in life it is less imprisoned, in mind it is even less imprisoned. It becomes freer and freer. So we say that only when there is a reaction from the object or the creature, then we say it is consciousness. But that's not true. Okay? That's what we're going to explain. Where these are absent or quiescent, we speak of that state of being as unconscious. The stone is unconscious, the caterpillar is slightly conscious. The cat or dog is even more conscious because there is a reaction. But consciousness can exist where there are no overt operations. Even when there is no reaction, no overt operation, consciousness is very much there. But it doesn't have instruments to express itself. There is a reaction, but there are no instruments for expression. A plant will feel the pain if you do harm to it, but it can't express that pain. Whereas a cat or a dog can express the pain. They'll go away or react in a sharp manner. So, we speak of that state as being unconscious. But consciousness can exist where there are no overt operations, no signs revealing it, even where it is withdrawn from objects and absorbed in pure existence or involved in the appearance of non-existence. Now, that's an interesting sentence. What his meaning is that when consciousness is withdrawn or absorbed into pure existence is, let us say, substance, matter. So, in a stone, it is matter, but the consciousness is there, but it is absorbed into the matter itself. It's like a cloth, and you pour water on it, it gets absorbed. And you see only a wet cloth, but you don't see the water anymore. So the consciousness is very much there, but you don't see it. It is there, absorbed in the material itself. Okay, so there are no overall. So absorbed in pure existence or involved in the appearance of non-existence. So when there is existence at the higher level, it is featureless, immutable, immobile, without action. But it is consciousness. So you can interpret that as non-being. You can say there is nothing in it, which the Buddhists do say. The Buddhists say there is no consciousness, there is nothing, it is nihil. But the Vedantist will say, no, it is a blank, seeming blank which contains everything. So that's what is meaning by absorbed in pure existence or involved in the appearance of non-existence. The appearance of non-existence.
Appearance, yes.
The appearance of non-existence means no features at all. No color, no shape, no size, nothing. It is intrinsic in being. At the highest level, even at the lowest level, matter, which is substance, is same as consciousness. Consciousness and matter are the same at the highest level, even at the lowest level, but the quantum of consciousness and force changes. That's all. Okay? It is intrinsic in being, self-existent, not abolished by quiescence, by inaction, by veiling or covering. Now, not abolished by quiescence or by inaction is at the level of this self. The higher mind level, it is quiescent, but it is there. If you experience the self, you will see that consciousness is there fully. But below, in matter, in the stone, it is veiled or covering. The consciousness is there, but it is veiled, okay, or covering by inert absorption or involution. So, inert absorption is also involution. The consciousness has involved itself in matter and seems to be disappearing. Okay, that's what it means. By veiling or covering, by inert absorption or involution. It is there in the being, even when its state seems to be dreamless sleep, or a blind trance, or an annulment of awareness, or an absence. So when you are sleeping, okay, or you are in a trance, blind trance, even if you touch the person, sometimes there is no reaction at all. Particularly it is there in catalepsy. In catalepsy there are no signs of life at all. But still there is consciousness. Even life is there, but no signs of life.
Can you talk a little bit, I know it's a little bit to the side, but what Mother told the disciples when she might go into a cataleptic trance?
That's right. She said to be very careful.
Very
she said,
careful.
Don't be in a hurry to put me into a box.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, it did happen to Mother in 1962. For a fairly long time, there was no sign of life at all in the body. That is catalepsy. No sign of life at all. No heartbeat, no breathing. But after half an hour or so, she came back. And she had that fantastic experience of love. The ocean of love coming. Okay? So it is there even in dreamless sleep or blind trance or an annulment of awareness or an absence. In the supreme timeless status, highest level, where consciousness is one with being and immobile, okay, one with being, again consciousness and substance are together. Where consciousness is one with being and immobile, it is not a separate reality, but simply and purely the self-awareness inherent in existence. Then what happens there? There is no need of knowledge, nor is there any operation of knowledge. Because knowledge is the knower and the known. At our level, there is a relation between knower and known, and there is a relation in the knowledge between them, linking them. But at the highest level, knower and known are the same. Substance and consciousness are the same. So there is no need of knowledge. You become the knowledge yourself. Knowledge by identity. He is describing knowledge by identity. Okay, so there is no need of knowledge, nor is there any operation of knowledge, because there is immobility, immutability, immobility. There is no movement at all in the higher planes of consciousness. Movement is only in the physical world. Being is self-evident to itself. It does not need to look at itself in order to know itself or learn that it is. It doesn't need to look at itself, nor can I. I don't need to see anything. In fact, that is, you have become the divine. You are the divine. It does not need to look at itself in order to know itself or learn that it exists. But if this is evidently true of pure existence, it is also true of the primal all existence. In other words, the collective. This is talking of the individual, but it is also the all existence is the entire existence. It is true at the universal level also. That's what he is saying. For just as spiritual self-existence is intrinsically aware of itself, so it is intrinsically aware of all that is in its being. This is not by an act of knowledge formulated in a self-regard, a self-observation, but by the same inherent awareness. At our level, if I want to know myself or look at why did I get angry yesterday, the anger is separate from me. But at that level, there is no anger, of course. There can be love and beauty and truth. But it is the same as the knower. Knower and known are the same. That's why I learn knowledge by identity. So it is intrinsically aware of all that is in its being. This is not by an act of knowledge formulated in a self-regard, a self-observation, but by the same inherent awareness. It is intrinsically all conscious of all that is by the very fact that all is itself. You become the whole cosmos and the whole creation. Thus, conscious of its timeless self-existence, the spirit, the being, is aware in the same way, intrinsically, absolutely, totally, without any need of a look or an act of knowledge, because it is all of time existence and of all that is in time. So time existence is the lower level, the physical world, because there is no time. So all that is there, it knows everything. That's why we have a Sanskrit phrase, Yasmin Vijjate Sarvam Vijjatan. That which being known, everything is known. At the highest level, that's what happens.
Time existence can be cosmic. Time existence can be cosmic.
Yes, it is there everywhere. It is there. Time is there at the level 1. Matter, life, mind, it is cosmic. Time is there. So, this is the essential awareness by identity. If applied to cosmic existence, it would mean an essential, self-evident, automatic consciousness of universe by the spirit, because it is everything and everything in its being. Mother said something very interesting. She said that for the supramental consciousness, if you want to go to that level, you have to be aware of the whole universe at the same time. Then you are fit for the supramental. So he is talking of the highest level. He is beginning the sentence with the supreme timeless existence. So if you want to go there, you have to be conscious of the whole universe at the same time. Not one by one, separately. So now we will summarize this quickly and see what he is saying. Put it in simple words. In the timeless consciousness of the self, Sat and Chit are one. Sat is substance and Chit is consciousness. They are one. Consciousness and substance, subtlest substance at the highest level, are united. There is immutability, no action, because Shakti, power, is held back and does not move into action. Okay? Then, normally, when we speak of consciousness, we understand it to be a reaction, a response to an external stimulus. If such response seems to be absent, as in matter and partly in vegetable life, we say there is no consciousness. But this is an error. If I touch a tree, it is not reacting. So we say, oh, there is no consciousness. If I kick a stone, it doesn't react. No consciousness. But that's not true. There is at a very low level. It is absorbed into the stuff itself. Okay? So, Consciousness is omnipresent from the highest peaks to the lowest depths. It is present in the superconscious as also in the subconscious, as in the inconscient. It is present even in dreamless sleep, in trance and catalepsy. Consciousness is there everywhere. It's strangely enough now, in the 21st century, science has also concluded that consciousness is the fundamental reality and not matter. For a long time in the 20th century, 19th and 20th century, science was of the opinion that matter is the only reality.
Empirical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now they have come to the fact that consciousness is the basic reality, not matter.
It's a big leap.
Yeah, it's a big leap, no doubt. In the supreme timeless witness self, since there is no operation of power, there is no action or reaction. Here, consciousness and existence being one and the same, there is no need of knowledge, because knowledge and the knower are the same. It's not, we should not misunderstand this. It doesn't mean to say that there is no knowledge, but there is no knowledge as we understand it. The operation of knowledge between knower and known, that disappears. It becomes one. The knower and the known is linked by knowledge. So knowledge disappears because knower and the known become one. That's what he's saying. Okay, so because knower and the known are the same, spirit is all that exists. So it knows the universe as its own being. This is what we call knowledge by identity. This identity may be described as the one that has itself become the many. The one has become the many. The many are not separate from the one, they are all the same. So this is the knowledge by identity. Now in the next paragraphs he will tell us what the other knowledge by separation. Indirect separative knowledge, direct separative knowledge. Those two he will explain further. So we go to the next para. But there is another status of spiritual awareness which seems to us to be a development from the state and power of pure self-consciousness, perhaps even a first departure, but in fact normal and intimate to it. For the awareness by identity is always the very stuff of all the spirit's self-knowledge, but it admits within itself, without changing or modifying its own eternal nature. What is this word? Subordinate.
Simultaneous awareness.
Okay, so and simultaneous awareness by inclusion and by indwelling. The being, the self-existent, sees all existences in its one existence. It contains them all and knows them as being of its being, consciousness of its consciousness, power of its power, bliss of its bliss. It is at the same time necessarily the self in them and knows all in them by its pervadingly indwelling selfness. But still, all this awareness exists intrinsically, self-evidently, automatically, without the need of any act, regard or operation of knowledge. For knowledge here is not an act, but a pure state, rather but a state pure, perpetual and inherent. At the base of all spiritual knowledge is this consciousness of identity, and by identity, which knows or is simply aware of all as itself, translated into our way of consciousness, this becomes a triple knowledge thus formulated in the Upanishad. He who sees all existences in the self, he who sees the self in all existences, he in whom the self has become the all existences. So in the Upanishad you have these three, the one in the many. The divine is there in you, in me, in everybody else. So that's the one in the many, and the many in the one, the cosmic consciousness, and the one that has become the many. In Life Divine, in the very first chapter, in the very first page, he says that matter is not necessarily only a fit dwelling place for the divine, but it is the divine itself. Matter is not a house fit for the divine to live in. It is much more than that. It is the divine itself. So that's what he is describing here. Okay? So, he who sees the self in all existences, he who sees the existences in the self, he in whom the self has become all existences. This is a cosmic consciousness, and I feel that everything is there within me. That's a comprehensive consciousness. The consciousness which is aware of everything being inside yourself. Or the other one, I am there in everybody. This is Narad, that is Rishi, but I am there, but with a different face. That's all. So, this is the apprehending consciousness. The consciousness goes out into each individual thing and becomes that thing. Okay, so he in whom the self has become all existence. Inclusion, indwelling, and identity. Inclusion is the many in the one, and indwelling, the one in the many, and finally identity, the one and the many becoming one. So Srivamda uses different words. Okay, the first one is he who sees all existences in the self. All existence in the self. This is inclusion. Everything is included in me. Okay. Then the other one, he who sees the self in all existences. I am seeing myself in everybody. That is the indwelling. The divine comes and dwells in you, in you, in you, in you, in me. So these are the three words he is repeating with one word. So how interesting. There is a sentence and he sums up the whole sentence with one word. Okay. So he who sees all existences in the self, inclusion. He who sees the self in all existences, indwelling. And the one becoming the many, identity. So, the language is very interesting to see how he uses words. Okay? Just imagine a whole sentence of 7-8 words, he is giving one word to you. Fascinating. Okay. So, inclusion, indwelling, and identity. But in the fundamental consciousness, this seeing is a spiritual self-sense. A spiritual self-sense. A seeing that is self-light of being. Not a separate regard or a regard upon self, turning that self into object. There is no subject-object.
Right.
They are the same. But in the fundamental self-experience, in this fundamental self-experience, a regard of consciousness can manifest which, though inherently possible, as inevitably self-contained power of spirit, is not a first active element of the absorbed intrinsic self-luminousness and self-evidence of the supreme consciousness. This regard belongs to or brings in another status of the supreme spiritual consciousness, a status in which knowledge as we know it begins. There is a state of consciousness, and in it, intimate to it, there is an act of knowing. The spirit regards itself. It becomes the knower and the known, in a way the subject and the object, or rather subject-object in one, of its own self-knowledge, But this regard, this knowledge is still intrinsic, still self-evident, an act of identity. There is no beginning of what we call separative knowledge. Now, it's a wrong thing what he is saying. At the highest level, there is Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. So, there what happens is, they are all one. Consciousness and power are one. But at the overmind level, the consciousness starts looking at its own power. So there is a separation. In the supermind, power and consciousness are one. There is no question of looking. They are all one. But at the lower level,
Overmind.
in the overmind level, the consciousness starts looking at the one, but within itself. So, there is knowledge by identity, yet the beginning of knowledge by separation starts from that level. And as it keeps coming down, by the law of one becoming the many and splitting up, the overmind is the principle that makes the one into the many. The many starts at the overmind level. So, and when it comes down, subject and object have become totally separate. At the highest level, one. At the overmind level, beginning of separation. It's interesting. You can see it in several ways. You can say, consciousness says to itself, let me see what I am capable of. Okay? So it says, let me look at my power. So there is separation. And then at the lower level, it tells the power, start creating the many. You can see it in that way.
So there it's the beginning of separative knowledge.
Yeah. At the overmind level.
At the overmind.
That's why the overmind level is the beginning of ignorance. Because separation is ignorance. Okay? So, this is what he is saying in the last few paragraphs. So, you can say that at the overmind level, the beginning of ignorance is there, but there is no ignorance really. But the beginning of the possibility of ignorance is there. I will read the summary of what he has said in this one. Okay? So, sometimes the summary helps to focus very clearly on what is being said. Apart from the knowledge by identity, the spirit allows itself two other modes of consciousness without losing its essential identity. Inclusion, the many in the one; indwelling, penetration, the one in the many. And the other one is the final, the one becoming the many. This is made possible without loss of initial fundamental identity. It's all one, and still it looks at itself, and Chit and Shakti separate themselves.
But there's no loss.
There is no loss. There is no loss. Okay. So, very difficult for the mind to picture all these things. But with some imagination and little adjustment, a little give and take, one can understand. The real thing can be understood only when you have the experience. But when you have not the experience, mind has to imagine these things. So, this is made possible without loss of initial fundamental identity. The spirit knows all because it is the all, and identity is repeated for, this identity is repeated for existence, consciousness, power and bliss. It's not only Chit and Shakti, but also Sat, also Ananda. Everything, the identity applies to all. Okay? So, there is no need at that highest level of act, effort, seeking. At our level, we have to make an effort to see. All scientific knowledge is like that. But there is no effort. It's automatic. The knowledge is inherent, intrinsic, automatic, essential. This is what the Isha Upanishad speaks of when it refers to the one in the many in the one becoming the many. Okay. So, verses 6 and 7, this is there. Okay. So, yet it may be said that the beginning and source of the phenomenon of knowledge starts here without loss of identity. Okay. The knower and known being one separate themselves. It's like the sea, which is one. There are no waves. Okay. But at the overmind level, the waves start forming, the individual waves, the many. And each wave knows that it is part of the sea. But little lower down, the waves start thinking that I am part of the sea, but I am also an individual and I am conscious of my individuality. Come a little lower down, the knowledge that I am part of the sea disappears and you become separate. So, that is what is being said. But when the subject draws a little back from itself as object, that's what I was telling about the consciousness looking at its own as object. Okay, so but when the subject draws a little back from itself as object, then certain tertiary powers of spiritual knowledge, of knowledge by identity, take their first origin, which are the sources of our own normal modes of nature. There is a spiritual intimate vision, a spiritual pervasive entry and penetration, a spiritual feeling in which one sees all as oneself, feels all as oneself, contacts all as oneself. There is a power of spiritual perception of the object and all that it contains or is, perceived in an enveloping and pervading identity, the identity itself constituting the perception. There is a spiritual conception that is the original substance of thought, not the thought that discovers the unknown, but that which brings out the intrinsically known from oneself and places it in self-space, in an extended being of self-awareness, as an object of conceptual self-knowledge. There is a spiritual emotion, a spiritual sense. There is an intermingling of oneness with oneness, of being with being, of consciousness with consciousness, of delight of being with delight of being. There is a joy of intimate separateness in identity. Now look at that. There is a joy of intimate separateness in identity, of relations of love, joined with love in a supreme unity, a delight of the many powers, truths, beings of the eternal oneness, of the forms of the formless. All the play of the beginning,
becoming.
All the play of the becoming in the being founds its self-expression upon these powers of the consciousness of the spirit. But in their spiritual origin, all these powers are essential, not instrumental, not organized, devised, or created. They are the luminous self-aware substance of the spiritual identical, made active on itself and in itself, spirit made sight, spirit vibrant as feeling, spirit self-luminous as perception and conception. All is in fact knowledge by identity, self-powered, self-moving in its multitudinous selfhood of one awareness. The spirit's infinite self-experience moves between sheer identity and a multiple identity, a delight of intimately differentiated oneness and an absorbed self-rapture. Very difficult but we'll have to go very carefully and look at each word. Then we can do that. So, to get the basic idea of what he's saying, I'll read the summary, then we'll go into each sentence.
Okay.
So, the summary of this para is like this. In this strangely separative oneness, okay? To understand this, you can think of the sea and waves are forming. At the highest level, there are no waves, there is only oneness. But the waves are forming, and each wave is conscious of its being part of the sea. So, although they are separate, seemingly, they are only oneness. In this strangely separative oneness, when subject draws back from object, three powers of knowledge take birth without being separate. Spiritual intimate vision, the many in the one. Spiritual pervasive entry, the one in the many. Spiritual feeling, in which the one sees all as oneself, one becomes the many. He is repeating in different words, but the same thing. Okay, so here, substance of consciousness, infinite and eternal, does not need to seek for knowledge outside itself. It is within itself. So, knowledge of itself is there within itself, not outside. Like for us, knowledge has to be outside. That object is there and I know it, it's knowledge for me. Here, substance of consciousness, infinite and eternal, does not need to seek for knowledge outside itself. it knows and finds the object within itself and places it in front so as to see and experience it. Although it is there, let me look at it a little. I put it far and look at it. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay, so as to see and experience it. This operation of subject being object within itself is repeated for substance, consciousness, power and bliss. Each thing. So it applies to bliss also. The bliss of the subject is separate and looks at the bliss in the object. Okay, so same thing where power also. So this triple way of knowledge, essentially one, becomes threefold in the normal waking consciousness of man in the physical world. But above it is a single identity in multiple identity. A single identity in multiple identity. That's when, in the highest level, subject is looking at object within itself. Okay? This is what Srivastava calls the derivative knowledge by identity. It is a degraded or lessened knowledge by identity. So the first knowledge is subject and object are one. The second degraded knowledge by identity is subject and object are beginning to separate but within itself. Then in the third level, subject and object become separate. Okay, so in the next para, he describes knowledge by separative but direct knowing. In the third, this is the third degree of knowledge viewed from the supreme heights. So from the highest level, knowledge by identity. Second level, knowledge by derivative knowledge by identity. Lessened, if you want, it becomes less. Diminished knowledge by identity. The third one, knowledge by identity but separative knowledge. I look at you and I see your thoughts, but they are your thoughts, not mine. Okay? And finally, when I come down, I don't know your thoughts, I don't know you at all, I have to use my senses. So these are the four types of knowledge that he speaks about. Okay? That's a summary of what we just read just now. But if you go into each sentence, I don't think we can finish it. So we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And next time, if found
But
necessary.
when the subject,
Pardon?
but when the subject
Yeah.
will begin with.
We'll go into detail for that one.
Okay. Thank you, Ranga.